Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Ad Project Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Joe Shellerud from Ad Advance, and today I am joined by Mr. Tony Miller. And Tony, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, Joe. Thank you for the Mister as well. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. You know, good Friday. Yeah, we got some snow on the ground up in Minnesota. Yeah, I don't know. It's good. Usually Matt doesn't throw that back at me, so I wasn't really ready for that.
Hit you with one on a Friday. Yeah. It's been an interesting week. Had to break out the shovel, a little bit of snow blowing as well. 'Tis the season in northern Minnesota.
Yep. Yeah. So for those who don't know Tony, Tony's our director of DSP. He's going to be covering some cool different features that we have, really digging into audiences and the insights that we can get there. And just to lead into it too, like if you're considering DSP or have been looking at it or figuring out what's the big deal with this thing, like for Amazon DSP, one of the major benefits that we have is the first party data that we get with Amazon. And by first party data, what we mean is just the ways that we can segment people into different audiences. So for example, if we look at the different ad platforms, like Facebook tries to track you through different social interactions that you have or things you do on your social profiles. And then based off of that activity, tries to put you into different groups that estimates like consumer behaviors. If we look at Google, now they can get a step closer and they can take search history and different pieces like that to get you into different audiences. Whereas Amazon, they can look at actual purchase history and from that determine who may be interested in certain types of products. And so with the first party data and the audience insights that we have within Amazon, it is super powerful. So that's the key reason why we wanted to cover that today with the podcast is there is so much power. And then with the extra tools that we're getting, there's a lot of cool ways that you can unlock different audiences. So I guess with that preface, Tony, where do you want to start?
Definitely great information there. And that's a piece that I always try to touch on too with clients or potential clients. Just the massive amount of data that Amazon has access to, and this is people's shopping habits. There's never been a larger data set in the history of the world. So it's a tremendously powerful tool. Can be a bit daunting, though, at the same time of like, okay, now where do I start?
Sure.
So today we're looking to talk about Audience Insights, which is a tool available through the Amazon DSP Council and can really be a beneficial tool, kind of a supplemental tool in helping your strategy and figuring out kind of where to start and what you're looking to do within DSP.
Sure. So if I go into Audience Insights within the DSP console, like what's it look like? What am I seeing? Where should I start? Yeah,
definitely. So if you hop into the Audience Insights piece of the DSP Council, you may notice some similar things to what maybe an Amazon rep shares with you on, a monthly or quarterly cadence there. It's a lot of insights into, different demographics. I guess backing up a step, it's broken into 4 different sections here. So the first one talks about demographic information, where it's going to be a lot of the similar stuff that you're able to find through like your brand analytics, for example. They also have information about timing then, so like day of the week, hourly data, weekly data, monthly data. Then it gets into the third section talking about purchase frequency. So for consumables, this is tremendously valuable information to have, are people purchasing multiple times or not, first off?
Sure.
Then it goes into how many times do they purchase over the year-long period. And then it goes into how long between those purchases.
Sure.
So incredibly valuable information for consumable brands. Excuse me. And then the last piece that it talks about is your consideration period. How long does it take people to eventually pull the trigger on a purchase after they're first introduced to your brand or even the subcategory that you're in?
Sure.
Now, a really cool piece about this is this doesn't just showcase information for your brand. This also has information for brands similar to yours within the same subcategory. So you get kind of a information about your brand, the people that purchase your product, their habits, but also kind of a benchmark. Where am I at versus my peers in the same category?
Sure. Yeah. So common questions that probably come to mind right now. Since this is available in the DSP console, one question is always, how do I get access to the DSP console? So to just answer that, to get access to the DSP console, you're either going to need to commit to a pretty significant amount of spend to get your own entity access directly through Amazon DSP. And there you can get control of the console itself. The other way to do it is to go through an agency or provider like us. We're able to pool all of our DSP spend together within our entity and break it apart via advertisers. So we have a lot more flexibility overall. And honestly, if you're just getting into Amazon DSP, it's a very complex platform. So not as good on the self-service orientation, which is why sponsored display exists, to try to simplify down some of those strategies. So a common question, how do I get access to this? Really, it's either committing to a pretty significant amount of spend, and then you can get your own entity access, or else going through a third-party provider like us or other different agencies or tool providers that are out there. So as I'm looking at the audience insights, let's just break down piece by piece, and maybe we can talk through like some examples on how we're able to use the data. So let's start at the top.
Yeah, for sure. So the first one that we talked about is demographics. So as I mentioned, you're gonna be able to find some of this in like your brand analytics as well. Should be very similar, or not, if not the same information here.
Sure.
So want to talk about some use cases for all of these, and want to keep in mind, this isn't just for DSP use cases. You can utilize this information for your sponsored ads or even external efforts as well. It's very valuable information to have. You're likely, as a brand, running advertising on multiple different channels too. So if it's working one place, it may very well work another place as well. Sure. Always great to test out. So with demographics, one of the first use cases that comes to mind here is when we are going through, say, like a brand building effort where we are, trying to reach a new audience of people who may not be familiar with our brand or our products, trying to get in front of them before maybe a need arises. And so that when that need does arise, your brand is the one that they think of.
Sure.
So something that demographics is very good for is kind of narrowing down your targeting. So right now, if we set up a campaign to go after people, in market for a particular category, whatever your brand partakes in, whatever category you're in, those audiences out there are massive. You can target millions of people in a single day. You can put tens of millions of impressions out there, and you're just kind of casting a really wide net and saying, hey, here it all is. We're targeting everybody. Thinking right now too, and especially the economic state that we're coming into, where maybe people are getting squeezed on margins, you maybe have to cut back on your advertising. It's a great opportunity to say, rather than casting such a wide net, let's narrow our focus and target the people that we know, based on this first party data, are most likely to interact with our brand and eventually, at the end of the day, make a purchase.
Sure.
So we can say, if men are more likely to purchase this product than women, or people who are retired are more likely to purchase, you name it. It's income, relationship status, your housing status. If you can layer these audiences on top of the massive in-market or lifestyle audiences that exist, you can really hone in your targeting and actually speak to the people that are going to be most receptive to your message.
And I think that's one big piece when you're looking at like Amazon DSP and how we're able to build audiences. You can essentially stack different audiences on top of each other. And so we could find people who are, say, interested in a certain topic. Maybe you do downhill skiing. So you can find people who are interested in potentially downhill skiing. But then you could layer on different demographics on top of that. So maybe if your products are geared more towards men, now you could layer that on top. And if there's a certain age range who really is looking for downhill skis for you, you can also apply that too. And so this can be used as a way to weed out people who obviously probably aren't going to be your target market. So, maybe we weed out people who are over 80 years old for downhill skiing and maybe under a certain age, just to limit the amount of impressions that are shown to people who definitely aren't going to be interested. But another way is if there's a really like core group that resonates with your products really well, now you can use demographics more as like an inclusion type thing, where now you're just really targeting that subset. So you can look at it either way, kind of as like a negative keyword on the search side, or at the same time, now let's just really focus on this one niche audience that I know is really going to resonate.
Yeah, for sure. And, a little nugget that I would pull out of that too, you hit on a great point where, you can layer these audiences within DSP to get more refined. Something that we've found is that when you're looking at these demographic audiences, the reach that they have sometimes can be a heck of a lot smaller than you might think. So, for example, if you say, hey, men are more likely to purchase my product than women, maybe I'm going to layer on targeting males over the in-market audience that I'm targeting. That may limit you too much, essentially, at that point. So rather than maybe layering on, they have to be a male to be targeted, maybe let's exclude female. Sure. And that way we're, eliminating a small section of targeting here while still then speaking to maybe the larger section. It's really just thinking about what kind of a reach am I going to have at the end of the day? Am I going to be too limited here? Which ultimately we're trying to be a little bit more limited than just general in market, but,
sure.
It may limit you too much.
The key mathematical thing that you're hitting on too is for some audience members, they may not be sure if they're male or female. So by excluding female, you're excluding people that are female, but then including what they know are male, and then the other ones that they're not sure of based off of the audience information. So that's why it's not a 1-for-1 there.
Right.
There is some demographic information that they're not sure of. So by excluding who we're certain may not be in our target market, you're not limiting it as much, and you would be including those people that they're not sure, say for like gender or age or different things like that.
Right. Yep. Definitely.
Yeah.
Moving on past the demographic information, we come to timing. So the main pieces here that I find useful from audience insights is going to be hourly timing and daily, like day of week timing. They do also layer in weekly performance and then monthly. I would take this away and if you're unsure if you have seasonality with your products, this could be useful for you. Sure. A lot of the brands that we interact with, if they've got a slow period or a busy period, they're likely aware of this ahead of time. So maybe not as useful, but still great information to have at the end of the day. The hourly information and day of week information is great to have. Within DSP, we can use day parting. Hey, people are most receptive to buying my products from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m, for example. Maybe that's when I'm going to set my day parting to only run ads at those periods. Again, getting back to kind of the economy too, this can help you, if you're budget limited, maybe narrow your focus and really hone in on those periods where people are most likely to be receptive. Sure. Day of the week as well. People are most likely buying your products on Saturday or Sunday. Great. Let's reduce our efforts during the week and really focus on those shoppers during the weekends.
Yeah. And this is kind of fun too, because it's the direct corollary to Amazon Marketing Stream now and the data that we have available. Like on the sponsored side, we're able to use our streamlined system to implement continuous bidding to take advantage of those times where people are most likely to buy. But on DSP, we also have tools and we have insights through Audience Insights, which is awesome to be able to see, especially if we're budget constrained and we have a very large audience we want to target. Now let's utilize that budget at the times where people are most likely to be receptive of our ads. Just kind of the approach we take on the sponsored side too. If we're budget constrained, day parting can be a great option there. Let's just utilize our limited budget at those key points where people are most likely to purchase.
Right. The third one that we get into, I think, is probably the most interesting from a strategical standpoint, talks about purchase frequency. So there's a couple different pieces here. One of them is talks about repeat purchases. For one, do shoppers make repeat purchases or not? And it's kind of broken down into a percentage. So, for consumables, 75% of people purchase my products more than once. Great. Maybe we now hone in on those 25% who make one purchase and maybe drop off and consider another brand at that point. It also gets into the number of purchases that they've made over the past 365. So of those people who make multiple purchases, here's how many on average they make in a year's time. Incredibly valuable as well. If somebody purchases your product 2-3 times and then, you see a steep decline in the graph after the third purchase, well, that maybe tells us, hey, we got to start reaching out to those folks who fall off after the third purchase, re-engage them, get them to come back in brand versus, flirting with purchasing another brand.
Sure.
The third piece of this talks about timing. Of those people who are purchasing multiple times, how long on average between those multiple purchases elapses before they come back? So what I think is amazing here is you can kind of group these all together and really come up with a great strategy for capturing people who may have fallen out of brand. So let's say, for example, people purchase your product 3 times, and then again, you see that steep decline on the graph where they may fall out of brand or what have you. If the average purchase time between purchases is a month, well, that tells us after 3 months, somebody's going to drop off, consider another brand or whatever. Well, maybe this is a great opportunity then to set up a repurchase strategy where we are going to re-engage people who have previously purchased our products. But now let's set an exclusion for those first 90 days, those first 3 months. We aren't going to focus on those people. We're going to exclude them from our targeting and really just speak to those people who are most likely falling out of brand to get them to come back at the end of the day.
Yeah. So there's a lot of pieces there that we can unpack. So one is we're looking at this and we know the repeat purchase rate and the frequency where they tend to repurchase. This can all feed back into the lifetime value of a new customer. So when we're looking at our advertising, we're not just looking at, like, if we look at ROAS based off of our advertising, ROAS is just tied to that first purchase. But if people keep coming back to purchase again, that may not get accounted into the ROAS calculation. And so your actual value that you're getting from your advertising in terms of repeat purchases is actually higher if people do actually repeat purchase from you. And so this can be really helpful when you combine this with new to brand metrics to figure out, all right, with my advertising, if I look at straight up ROAS on that first purchase, it may not look as good. But when I take into account that somebody who comes in on average buys from me another 2 times, now it can completely change the picture and how we approach that. So that's one piece that is extremely valuable overall to take into account. And then like Tony's saying too, now that we have that information, now we can incorporate that into our advertising strategies. So for repeat purchase strategies, like when is the right frequency to reach back out? Does it make sense to reach back out? How long should I wait? Where are these true drop-off periods? Like we don't want to hit somebody with ads who's going to come back and purchase from us anyway. And so looking at these averages and figuring out, okay, maybe if this amount of time elapses or goes after the first purchase, at that point, now I can reconsider a repurchasing strategy again. And so there's a lot of cool ways that we can implement this through the audiences within Amazon DSP. One, making sure that we're keeping those customers loyal to your brand. But 2, making sure that we're not wasting spend by targeting people with ads that would have come back anyways.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. We always want to be conscious of potential cannibalization and really trying to put our best foot forward when we're setting up campaigns.
Yep. Yeah. And just to hit on that too a little bit more, because I've seen a lot of discussions about this, cannibalization or the incremental value of your ads, it's super important to take into account. Because for instance, what we could do if we just wanted to make the advertising metrics look really good is anybody say they purchase and they're coming back, we could just retarget them with ads. And then that next purchase is going to get attributed to the ad. ROAS is going to look great, but did it really add any incremental value if they were going to come back again? No. And so that's the key thing when we're looking at advertising results is you have to go past the initial metrics and really look at the underlying data and the strategies that's implemented when you're taking this into account. So that's what Tony was getting at is the cannibalization. Like, yeah, there's no need to run ads if they're going to come back anyways. And so we want to try to exclude those audiences. And with these insights, it provides us even more information to be able to do that.
Definitely. And that brings us to the fourth section within audience insights, consideration period. So this is broken into two different graphs. One of them is for your subcategory. The other is for your brand specifically. So this is going to give you information for, how long does it take when somebody's first introduced to either the subcategory or your brand to eventually make a purchase. So, maybe smaller price point items don't have as much of a consideration period. If something's $5, like, it may not take much decision to say, hey, I'm going to buy this one or this one. Like at the end of the day, I might just purchase one immediately.
I'm going to buy a phone charging cord or I'm going to buy some AA batteries or different things like that. I'm just going to go in. I'm not going to spend much time looking around.
Right, definitely. But then let's say we get into, some higher price point items. It's a bit more of a consideration whether I'm going to open my wallet and make this $200-$300 purchase right now, or am I going to do some more research, shop around a little bit, see who the competition is out there? This is great information for those kind of brands with products that take a lot longer consideration period.
Yep. So if I'm looking at luxury watches, or if I'm looking at changing a consumable brand, like I'm switching my detergent or something like that, I'm probably going to look into it a little bit more because I'm making a habit change. And so anything higher price point or luxury items or something where I'm changing an existing habit, there's going to be more of a consideration time there.
Definitely. And what this can be really useful for is setting your look back windows. There's a lot of thought and strategy that goes into saying how far back am I going to look for people who have either purchased or viewed my brand. This can be very useful. If the consideration period from Audience Insights is showing, people take 60 days or so, 2 months to make an eventual purchase, well, that tells you your remarketing efforts may take a while. You might have to set longer look backs to, continue to remind that shopper that, hey, you've looked at our product, you've interacted with our brand, come back and make a purchase here. Whereas if, for example, you set your look back window to only go 15 days or a month, after that time period, you've lost that client or that shopper, so then another brand using Audience Insights sets their look backs longer. Now they're engaging that shopper. They're more likely to land that purchase at the end of the day.
Sure. Yeah. It's super helpful when we're setting up our advertising funnels to figure out the timing and the frequency of our ads. So if you have a longer time period from when they're initially introduced to the brand to actually purchasing, you're going to want to take your time more on upper funnel strategies at the start, get them more familiar with their brand, and then slowly work your way down the funnel. You don't want to jump right from brand introduction to trying to drive the purchase. It's just too quick. And so it's really helpful when we're setting up the funnel. How quickly do we try to move down the funnel? And then the other pieces are, how far do we look back? So if they looked at our brand, say the typical consideration time period is 2 months, and they looked at our brand a year ago, maybe there wasn't something that resonated with them and we shouldn't go back that far. And we should just focus on the people who are familiar with our brand right now. Or the other way to look at it is maybe I just need to reintroduce them to my brand and start that 2-month time period again. So there's a lot of different ways that you can look at it, but it really helps in when we're structuring the full funnel, how quickly we should be getting down the funnel, and then all the timing aspects that go along with that.
Right. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So any other key takeaways that you have or other strategies, or kind of covered all the key audience insights? Yeah,
I think we've kind of covered it here. I mean, really my overall message, I would say, is, this is one piece of the puzzle, one thing to take into consideration when setting up your overall strategy. If you're going for a full funnel approach, let's utilize this information where it's going to be most helpful. It's great information to have and leverage and actually put into practice at the end of the day here. There are going to be other other things to take into consideration as well here, which, as an advertiser or the brand yourself, you're gonna have a lot of those external pieces as well. But this is just one piece of the puzzle here. One of the tools in the tool belt that we have at our disposal when setting up a client for DSP.
Yeah. So if these insights sound good, you need to be running DSP to get them, but definitely consider reaching out and trying to get these insights. If you have a provider who is currently running your DSP, know that this is available to them. So you can definitely ask for that too. Overall, it's a ton of great information. It's really fun on the audience building side when you get to take into account all these different sources and pieces to make sure that you've got this awesome full funnel strategy put together. So we have a lot of fun digging into it, and there's always new creative ways that you can use the data and look at it. So
definitely
always learning and growing. So
there you go.
Yeah. Well, this has been another episode of the Ad Project podcast. As always, we really appreciate you listening. If you're able to and have a second, we'd love a review for the podcast. So make sure to do that. Give us any feedback on how we can continue to improve. And as always, we'll see you on the next episode.